Do you ever wonder what would be a good survival kit for a boat? And I'm talking a toolkit for outboards. What are the parts and pieces that you could have in your toolkit that would get you back to the truck or get you back to the dock? So stick around for today's video, and I will go over some basics on how to keep one of these babies running. Good afternoon, my name is Tom. If you've been following any of my channel and following any of my videos, you've noticed that I do a lot of deer hunting and I do a lot of fishing. Well, on the last trip, this motor left me high and dry, a mile from the boat landing. So I decided I'd do a video today on, you ever wonder what is a good kit to put together for your boat? I'm talking a toolkit. And I'm talking for these small motors because these small motors are the ones that usually get you way back in, whether it's up a swamp or up a stream or just out into the backwater where there's not a lot of other boats. So I wanted to go over what I keep in my toolkit, and maybe you'll find something interesting in here. I've been traveling with this motor since 1989. That was the first time that it left me stranded ever. What I believe is a problem, I'll take this lid off so you can get in and get comfortable with it. I own several of these motors, and one of the reasons that I say several, I own 3 of these. I have 3 8-horses, I have a 15-horse, and I've got a very, very old 10-horse that I had picked up. But the 3 motors in this are close in age, and the reason for that is over time I've learned how to work on these motors. So when I get out in the bush and I have a problem with a motor, a lot of times I can fix that problem. And in my toolkit, I have certain parts and pieces that I would not go anywhere in a boat without. Now the part that I believe has been the problem is my primer button on here. That is a part that I did not have. I will be changing that part out. I've got the motor to run here, but I still believe, I'm going to play with it a little bit more, but I still believe that it is the primer button. If not, then I will have a new primer button and I will have one in the toolbox. I'm going to go through the toolbox that I carry for this motor. I carry certain parts with me. I carry certain tools with me that I have had to work on this motor 10 miles or up a lake. One year we was up in a lake 10 miles from the pickup truck on a 10-day fishing trip. And on day 2 this motor started to act up. Well, I've owned this motor for a long time, so I had a good idea of what the problem was. The problem was that on this particular motor, inside of the carburetor, is a vent hole. And if you don't drain the motor out when you're done fishing, sometimes that vent hole will become clogged. And the only way to get in there is to take the carburetor off, take the bottom of the carburetor off the sediment bowl, or the whole, I'm not really into terms. But anyways, you take the bottom of the carburetor off and you can see that little vent hole. So you clean it out with a small piece of wire, clean it out the best you can, put it back together, and the motor runs good. But there's other things that can go wrong on these motors. Like the starter can quit on you. Well, if you break that rope off 20 miles in on a lake or 10 miles or way up a stream and you've broken that rope off, you've got to have a way to start this motor. So them are the kind of things that are in my toolkit for the boat, and that's what I'm going to be going over today. As you can see, she starts right up. But on the lake the other day, I had a little problem with it. It was the primer button. So I've changed out that primer button, and now the motor is running great. But that's not the only thing that can go wrong on these motors. That was a pretty bad thing because I didn't have one in my toolbox to change it out. But other parts I do have that I have broken and I have had go wrong. So that's what I'm going to discuss today. I am running the motor today in a 55-gallon drum of water. I have one at home, I have one at the cabin. It's just easier to stick it in a thing of water and and work on it that way than to keep running back and forth to the boat landing. And I very rarely go to the marina to get a motor serviced because I work with motors that I've worked with for years and years. One of the reasons I'm wearing a bandana today is because it is a hot July day in Maine. And us Mainers, our blood is very thick. We do not tolerate hot, heat, and humidity very well. Stick around to the end of this video. I'm going to take this motor cover off. I'm going to go through the parts and pieces that are in my toolkit, and then I'm going to lay them out on this table at the end of the video so that you can see up close. I'll bring the camera up. We'll get a close-up view. I'm taking a few moments out of this video to plug my channel and plug my videos. I greatly appreciate your support, and if you would hit the subscribe button or hit the like button, that would go a long ways in YouTube, and that's how we grow these channels, and that's how we're able to bring these videos to the YouTube platform. So if you wouldn't mind, hit the like button, and then come on back, check out some of my videos. I am in the state of Maine. I fish and hunt all over the state of Maine, and I thoroughly enjoy the comments that I get from the viewers. And it's just a great big family that we're kind of all doing the same thing, and the support is so powerful in being able to produce these videos. So I want to thank you personally for your support, and I want to thank you ahead of time for just clicking that like button and enjoy my videos. I thoroughly enjoy bringing them to you. So you have a great day, and I'm going to continue on with this video. But the first thing I think you should do is just be very familiar with your motor. That's probably the most important thing. There's a kill switch, and I also have an extra kill switch key. This comes off in a case of emergency, kills the motor. You're supposed to hook that to yourself so that if you fall out of the boat, the motor will shut off. I don't do that, but I've been boating for 50 years. But in case, here we are inside of the motor. This is your spark plugs. I always carry a set of spark plugs that are all pre-gapped so that I can change my plugs out while I am out there. This is an air breather that sits over the front of the carburetor. So it's nice to have enough tools with you to be able to get this off. Because sometimes, if you're a long ways from the truck, sometimes it's better to fix your motor than to try to work your way back to the truck. If someone there to give you a tow, that's great. But where I fish and how I fish, I spent a week last week on the lake, not one other boat out there, and I was 10 miles from the highway. So sometimes it's easier to fix your motor if you can. There's just a couple of basic tools that you can have with you. This right here, it comes from the fuel tank. It plugs into the front of the fuel tank. One year I was on a fishing trip. We went probably 6 miles up to Suncook Lake up in northern Maine, and we camped on an island. We were going to be there for a week. As soon as we pulled into the island, because the boat was full of gear, I pulled the motor up because you got to get it from hitting the bottom. But what happened is when I pulled the motor up, this went up against a cooler and it broke off. Well, I was 5 miles from the pickup. So if you don't have, this little pot only cost a few dollars. If you don't have this little pot with you and that happens to you, you are up a creek without a paddle. But in my toolkit, that's one of them things that I have a couple of usually, if not 2 or 3. So that's one tool, one pot that you can put in your kit with a hose clamp. Because sometimes they come with a factory clamp that you can't reuse. But if you have a hose clamp that takes a straight screwdriver to open it up, you can change this pot out very easily. This comes out of the hose, put the new one in, put the hose clamp on, you're back in business. That's exactly what we did on that trip. As soon as we broke camp and all that, I took 5 minutes and I fixed my motor. That's what's in my toolkit over here. And like I said, I will lay that out for you in just a few minutes. And on a lot of these little motors, there's a starter right on top. This is the starter that you use that takes a rope. But if something goes wrong with this starter and you can't use it, again, you're up a creek without a paddle. So what I keep in mind, and you can get these You can get these anywhere. I keep an extra pull cord with me. This one comes off a lawnmower. I don't know what you call it where you're from, but we call it a dump here. Nowadays they want to call it a transfer station. But we go to, there's a little local dump, and you can go there, and it's where people throw away lawnmowers and stuff like that. And you can pull one out, and you can cut it off with a pocket knife, and you can put that in your toolkit. So now, for the cost of going to the local dump and pulling this off an old lawnmower, there's a groove here that you can take this cord and you can wrap that right around your motor. And now you've got a hand pull cord that will start the motor. See that? I'm back in business. Now I can go to the truck with something that was free. I stuck that in my toolbox from the dump. So there's no cost there. The other thing I keep in my toolbox, and I keep it in a Ziploc freezer bag so it stays brand new, this is the pump that goes into your hose that goes to the fuel tank. I've had these go bad. Doesn't happen all the time. But when you're on a trip, 10, 15, 20 miles from the pickup, and this goes bad, you're in trouble. So I keep one of those in. Very simple to install in the hose. There is a arrow on it that gives you the direction. This arrow points that way. That means this comes from the tank, and this goes to the motor. So when you squeeze and get fuel to your motor, this is how you prime the motor from the tank, get your tank all primed up. And that's another reason why we keep those. Here's another cord. I have 2 cords just because it was, like I said, at the dump, everything was free. Well, I guess right now, oh, here they are. I knew I had some. I'll go through that in a minute. In this bag is a bunch of odds and ends. That's where I keep the small hose clamps. But you keep one of these in your boat because this is another one of those parts that you can fix, recover from, and head for home. Real easy. And the other thing you always keep in your toolbox, always, is a set of brand new spark plugs. Preferably all gapped and ready to go. I keep new ones, plus I keep my old ones. I have my old ones, which the motor is running, so why not save them? I keep my old ones inside of my tackle box, just like any tackle. And I have a few tools in the tackle box as well for the motor. Some of the finer tools that I don't want to get hurt. But I always keep a set of spark plugs. And you want a spark plug wrench. This boat never ever leaves. Then this is just a cheapo. You can go to Harbor Freight, you can go to any cheap store and get a cheap ratchet that will remove spark plugs out of a outboard. I think you can buy this whole toolkit with the ratchet and a bunch of sockets for about $5 at Harbor Freight. It's a piece of junk, but all you're doing is pulling out a set of spark plugs. I want a junk one for this because if tools get wet and rusty, we're not ruining a good snap-on or something like that. SK ratchet. But you want to be able to pull out your spark plugs when you're out there. Sometimes you get water in your gas and you have to bleed the motor and everything, get the water to go out through the spark plug holes. So there's many reasons to remove your spark plugs. You name it on the lake, I've probably had it happen. I've had water in the gas, I've lost spark plugs, I've lost, like I said, this piece, I've lost the fuel pump from the tank, you name it. With 50 years of being on the water, things have happened. And the other thing I always keep on in my box is a roll of black tape. Sometimes I've had it happen with this particular motor. Over on this side, when you lifted up this handle, there was a wire in here that was moving. So what it did was it chafed itself. And it was the kill switch wire. So it took me a little while to chase that down, figure out what it was. But once I figured it out, 2 inches of this black tape wrapped around that bare spot on the wire, cured it. That was probably 15 years ago. It's still there, no problems at all. It's just a small roll of electrical black tape, electrician stuff. Always keep a decent screwdriver. They don't have to be high end. The other thing that I keep in here is zip ties. Zip ties, this is what's called a set of dikes. They're used for cutting. I use them for cutting wires, but I use them for cleaning up these zip ties. Why the zip ties? There's a lot of hose things now that are on a motor that's instead of using a hose clamp, they use a zip tie. So that's why I put in different size zip ties. Like the one here on the primer button takes really small ones. The ones on the fuel line take really big ones. So that's why I have the zip ties. As well as one time I had a lot of parts when I was working on that carburetor. I had a couple of parts that broke. I was 10 miles from the truck. So all we wanted to do was get the motor running. So that we did finish our trip with this motor. And then when I got back, I did go to the marine shop and got all the parts I needed to fix everything on that carburetor. There was plastic parts, and like anything plastic, over time they probably should be replaced. But that's why I keep zip ties in my box. I keep a few wrenches, different wrenches that fit different things on the motor, nothing fancy, but some pliers. You need a pair of pliers, and I do have a set of needle nose pliers. And the reason you absolutely need a set of needle nose pliers as well as these pliers is one of the easiest things to go wrong on these motors is a shear pin. Now I'm going to open this up and take it out, but if you don't know what a shear pin is, the shear pin is what's on your prop. I won't do that demonstration today. I will do it when it's on the boat, but I will do a demonstration on pulling the prop off, cleaning it up, all that stuff, and then putting the prop back on with a new shear pin. All it takes is one rock on bottom to shear the pin off, and then this motor is going absolutely nowhere. So in my tackle box, in my toolbox, is a half a dozen shear pins, as well as the cotter pin that holds the prop on. Because without that cotter pin, you might as well have nothing as well. So I have a cotter pin for the prop, and I have a shear pin for the prop. And those are probably one of the easiest things to go wrong on a motor when you are a long ways from the pickup on these smaller motors. The bigger motors, I guess the prop, my 15 horse doesn't have a shear pin. I believe it has something like a clutch. I'm not really up on that motor like I am this one. I've had this one since 1989. But I think that takes care of it. Another hose, just a bunch of odds and ends. Like I said, I'll lay this out on the table so you can see. I do keep an extra boat plug with me in this box. That's another one of the things on the boat. If something goes wrong with this, you could whittle yourself a stick of wood, but it takes nothing to keep one of these in my box. Just want to show you what's in these packages because I'm sure that it won't come out on the camera over there. This right here is 2 shear pins and 1 cotter pin inside of this package. And the same thing here. There's 2 shear pins, and I guess this one's open. So I can take one out and show you. This right here is a shear pin. It's what goes on that prop. And then there's a cotter pin in here, brand new one. You always save the old one just in case you can use it again, but just in case, comes with a nice brand new cotter pin. And that's what holds the prop on. And that's what you need needle nose pliers for, is to get that off. And then you need the regular pliers usually to pull it out. And the same thing with this shear pin. Usually this will come right out. It's just a little piece in there. But shear pins and little motors, that's what'll get you back. And I believe it's, I don't know if I could tell, these got tags on, but I know it's not very much money. Sale price was $1.58. So for less than $2, less than $3, I have got 4 shear pins and 2 cotter pins. That's pretty cheap insurance to have out in your boat. So I've got this stuff set up on the table. I'm going to move you over there now. I hope you enjoy this and pick something up from it. Alright, I'm not endorsing any of the products that you see here. These are just things that I think should be in a survival kit for the boat, and the survival kit on the boat is just as important as your day bag, your day pack, everything you need to spend the night. We are modern day woodsmen and sportsmen. We usually travel with four-wheelers, snowmobiles, and outboards. I believe that having the skill and the ability to be able to maintain and take care of your tools that take you out there are just as important as learning how to build a fire, build a shelter. All of that stuff is small compared to the everyday life of a real woodsman and real modern day sportsman of today. We get ourselves way back in with sometimes miles to go to get back out to the highway. This is my ropes for the motor, my 2 spark plugs. Here's my primer button. I have a knife. All these tools are rusty. They have been in the boat for many, many years, and a boat is a very wet environment. This toolbox goes in absolutely every trip, every boat that I go out on. I got a few screwdrivers, playing with the carburetor, like I said, my ratchet for getting the spark plug out, dikes, more stuff. So I think that just about covers what's in a survival kit. If you have any questions about motors and stuff like that, I am not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I have had these 8-horse Johnson motors since 1989. If it can go wrong with the motor, it has. And I've been out there and I've only had one trip that I had to paddle back. That was just a week ago. Like I said earlier, it was because of the primer button. If you would and you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to grow the channel. I'm hoping to continue putting out videos like this, my experiences in the Maine woods. Well, thank you for coming along on today's video of a survival kit for an outboard motor, as well as yourself, as you're up in these different places that we find ourselves as modern day woodsmen and fishermen and sportsmen and hikers and all that. That's all. We carry a lot of different tools nowadays for getting us out into the woods. So I will see you on the next video, and you have a great day.